Okay, my first graders, today we're going to look at Tacky the penguin. In our story, we're going to think about what happens at the start of our story. Okay, in other words, what happens first. We're going to think about the events in the middle. Okay, we might talk about what happens next or before something else happens. Okay, so when we talk about what happens after something happens, we think about the event that they're talking about, and then we think, okay, what happens if it's after? What happens next? If they ask us a question about what happens before something, that means we think about the event and then we think, okay, well, what happened right before that? Okay, so sometimes we use to talk about stories in order. Sometimes we use words like after and before to help us sequence the story. All right, we also talk about what happens at the start of the story, and of course, what happens last or at the end of the story. The end and and the words end and last mean the same thing. All right, enjoy our story, Tacky the penguin, and then you're going to do an activity that goes along with our story today, putting our story in order.
Miss S. Today we are going to read Tacky the Penguin, written by Helen Lester and illustrated by Lynn Mussinger. There once lived a penguin. His home was a nice icy land he shared with his companions. His companions were named Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect. His name was Tacky. Tacky was an odd bird. Every day, Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect greeted each other quietly and politely. Tacky greeted them with a hearty slap on the back and a loud, "What's happening?" Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect always marched. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tacky always marched. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 6, 0, 2.5, 0. His companions were graceful divers. Tacky liked to do splashy cannonballs. Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect always sang pretty songs like Sunrise on the Iceberg. Tacky always sang songs like How many toes does a fish have? Tacky was an odd bird. One day, the penguins heard the thump, thump, thump of feet in the distance. This could only mean one thing: hunters had come. They came with maps and traps and rocks and locks, and they were rough and tough. As the thump, thump, thump drew closer, the penguins could hear the growly voices chanting, "We're gonna catch some pretty penguins, and we'll march 'em with a switch, and we'll sell 'em for $1 and get rich, rich, rich." Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect ran away in fright. They hid behind a block of ice. Tacky stood alone. The hunters marched right up to him, chanting, "We're gonna catch some pretty penguins, and we'll march them with a switch, and we'll sell them for $1 and get rich, rich, rich." "What's happening?" blared Tacky, giving one hunter an especially hearty slap on the back. They growled, "We're hunting for penguins. That's what's happening." "Penguins?" said Tacky. "Do you mean those birds that march neatly in a row?" And he marched. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 6, 0, 2.5, 0. The hunters looked puzzled. "Do you mean those birds that dive so gracefully?" Tacky asked. And he did a splashy cannonball. The hunters looked wet. Do you mean those birds that sing such pretty songs? Tacky began to sing, and from behind the block of ice came the voices of his companions, all singing as loudly and dreadfully as they could. How many toes does a fish have? And how many wings on a cow? I wonder, yep, I wonder. The hunters could not stand the horrible singing. This could not be the land of the pretty penguins. They ran away with their hands clasped tightly over their ears, leaving behind their maps and tracks and rocks and locks, and not looking at all rough and tough. Goodly, lovely, angel, neatly, and perfect, hugged Tacky. Tacky was an odd bird, but a very nice bird to have around. The end.